They never noticed the exact moment their marriage began to die. Not a fight. Not a betrayal. Just a small silence that grew into a wall they could no longer climb. Today, you'll understand the invisible moment when long marriages start falling apart, long before anyone is brave enough to admit it. For most couples, the end of a long marriage doesn't begin with shouting. It doesn't begin with betrayal. It begins with something much quieter. A subtle shift so small that neither partner recognizes it until years later. This is the story of how silence becomes the most dangerous force inside a long-term relationship, and why, in 2025, more marriages are collapsing because of it than ever before. Today, you'll learn how silent fear grows, how emotional distance spreads, and why couples who spent decades together suddenly feel like strangers. 1. The first invisible moment. It usually starts with exhaustion. Not physical, emotional. One partner says something soft, something vulnerable, something like, "I feel lonely lately." And the other, overwhelmed by work, stress or routine, doesn't answer fully. Not because they don't care, but because they don't have the energy to dive into a difficult conversation. So they give a short answer. A neutral nod. A half smile. And the other partner quietly thinks, "Okay, maybe now isn't the time." That moment is the crack. A tiny one. But a crack that only grows. 2. Emotional micro-withdrawals. Little by little, both begin making micro-decisions that protect themselves instead of the relationship. He stops sharing his frustrations. She stops expressing her needs. They both stop asking deeper questions. And instead of talking, they simply coexist. These small withdrawals feel harmless at first. But emotionally, something is dying. The marriage stops evolving. And anything that stops evolving begins to fade. 3. The rise of silent fear. Here's the part most couples never notice. When two people stop communicating deeply, they don't become neutral. They become afraid. Afraid to bother the other. Afraid to trigger an argument. Afraid to be judged or ignored. Afraid that it's only me feeling this. Silent fear grows like mold, quietly, slowly, invisibly. It spreads into everything. Dinner conversations. Texts. Physical affection. Eye contact. Future plans. And soon, silence becomes the safer option. 4. When love turns into careful distance. After years together, couples often confuse peace with avoidance. They stop fighting, not because everything is okay, but because they don't have the emotional energy to face the truth. They walk on eggshells. They avoid sensitive topics. They choose routine over vulnerability. And then comes the moment every broken marriage shares. One day, one partner looks at the other and realizes they haven't been truly connected in years. They live together. They share bills. They raise kids. But their souls haven't touched in a long time. That realization hits like a cold wave. Quiet. Inevitable. Like waking up next to a stranger you once loved deeply. 5. The dangerous year, 2025. Why 2025? Because couples today face a new silent threat. Emotional overload. Too much work. Too much pressure. Too much noise. Too many screens. Too much distraction. Not enough presence. People arrive home emotionally empty. And you can't pour into a marriage when you're empty. So communication becomes a luxury. Connection becomes rare. And silence becomes the default. Long marriages aren't ending because of lack of love. They're ending because both partners are exhausted in ways their parents never were. 6. The breaking point. Here's the truth. By the time a partner says, "I don't feel anything anymore," the relationship usually died years earlier. Not in one big moment, but in thousands of tiny silences. The distance wasn't created overnight. It was built slowly. Each time a difficult conversation was avoided. Each time an emotion was swallowed. Each time vulnerability was postponed. Marriages don't explode. They evaporate. 7. Can it be saved? Yes, but only with brutal honesty. The only cure for silent fear is courageous communication. Not dramatic confrontations. Not emotional accusations. Courageous, vulnerable truth. Sitting down and saying, I miss us. I feel alone. I'm scared we're drifting apart. I want us back. But most couples wait too long. They speak up only when the bond is already weak and fragile. The earlier the silence is addressed, the greater the chance of revival. 8. Final truth. Long marriages don't fail because love disappears. Love doesn't vanish. It starves. It gets ignored. It gets overpowered by routine. It gets replaced by silence. The real tragedy isn't divorce. It's the years spent drifting apart without noticing. If you're watching this, remember one thing. A single conversation, an honest, vulnerable one, can restart what silence tried to kill.